What's going on, Sooner Nation? Welcome back to the Sooner Surge for softball edition. As before we get started with this video, please check out fanstop.com. When you get there, use code SURGE. You'll get 10% off your first 3 months. Officially licensed gear. Check them out, fanstop.com. Privileged today to be joined by Justin McLeod, D1Softball, basically softball guru. Been doing it for 15 years probably. I mean, just works all over the place and just covers the sport like no other. So thanks so much, Justin, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a minute, and that term guru, that's a nice one. I'm going to add that one to the business card. I think I like that.
That's right. Add it to the business card, man. Dr. Pepper guru and softball guru, right? So, hey, just kind of opening it up, just your overall thoughts on just the game itself, softball itself, as it continually grows. I mean, the viewership for the World Series over 2 million. I mean, just it seems like it grows every year. Just kind of your thoughts on the overall game as it is right now, maybe where it's going.
I think we're in a great spot, honestly. It tells me something in the constantly changing landscape of college athletics to be one of those sports that's not football, not men's basketball, not the major revenue producers, but to be one of those sports that people think about and that people talk about when they say, okay, what effect is XYZ going to have on, and they say softball. It's not, we're just kind of an afterthought anymore. Softball has grown to the point where it's something people think about. Okay, what effect is, this thing that the NCAA, this court decision, this, NIL portal, like softball is one of the, and to me, there's really not a better compliment than that in terms of how we've risen as an entire sport. I think that's really an indicator of where we are. We have grown so much. The television viewership for random regular season games all the way to the World Series is so high. You also see attendance at games, some whether that's random mid-major programs that just have couple thousand fans packing their stadiums regularly, or some of these big programs like Love's Field, like Clemson, and you see thousands of fans packed in there on a Wednesday night, on a Friday night, on a Sunday afternoon. I think we're in a great spot, honestly. We've got to continue doing what we've done to get to this point and not feel like we're just coasting. But I honestly think we're in a great spot.
Yeah, Justin, going back to the Women's College World Series last week, and you had 1 versus 2, Texas and Oklahoma. Just how shocked were you at the Game 2 decision to start Carly Keeney? I know there are a lot of people like, man, that seems a very kind of shocking decision. Of course, everything Patty Gasso seems to decide turns to gold, it seems like. But how shocked? I mean, that was a series really that had a lot. You had the Mia Scott play that was a super crazy play, but that Game 2 starting decision was a little shocking to a lot of people. Just curious what your thoughts were on that.
I was surprised by it myself. I mean, I actually remember we were sitting in the press box and they brought out a couple of people had paper lineups. And so they brought out lineups and we wanted to see the pitching matchup. And I knew Oklahoma was playing with a little bit of house money. Even if you lose that game, you've got Game 3. You know what Maxwell's going to do because you knew you were going to throw Kelly in Game 3. So your worst case scenario was you lose and play Game 3. So OU was playing with a little bit of house money. I thought house money probably meant you start Kirsten Deal, maybe go to Nicole May in relief because, May wasn't great in her start earlier in the week. So I thought maybe swap Deal and May. But either one of them I could have seen starting, and then the lineups come out and it's Keeney, and I'm like, okay. But at the same time, I feel like moments like that is what OU brought Keeney in for. At the time, obviously Maxwell wasn't there yet, so you didn't know what the workload was going to be. But I think the biggest selling point for Keeney out of the portal from Liberty last year was she's consistent. She doesn't get phased in big moments. Pressure doesn't bother her. The opponent doesn't matter to her. She's very consistent, very steady. So once I thought about it for a minute, it kind of made a little bit of sense. And I think also it kind of sets up for the portal this year in 2 years and 3 years. It's not just, hey, you're going to play in the World Series, you're going to play likely for a national championship. Part of that now is a pitcher in the portal, considering Oklahoma now can see there's going to be an opportunity to pitch in the World Series, not just be there, not just enjoy the atmosphere. Carly Keeney pitched, Peyton Monticelli pitched, so can you on that World Series stage. I don't think that's an understated piece either.
Yeah, so obviously it's a few days following the fourth straight national championship for Oklahoma, and they lose what's regarded, I mean, Patty Gasso said it herself, greatest senior class in college softball history. How do you think OU and Gasso should go about replacing those 10 seniors?
You definitely have to hit the portal. I mean, that I feel like that's probably the obvious starting place. They've got a really good freshman class coming, a big freshman class, but you've got room to add from the portal. And I think the biggest thing you need to get from the portal is somebody in that Keeney mold, somebody even in that Maxwell mold. Obviously, you'd love to get an ace who can, get you to a national championship like that. In Maxwell mold, obviously you want that. But when I say in that Keeney and the Maxwell mold, I mean somebody who's been there. Somebody who has been there, whether that's to the World Series, whether that's ace of a staff, whether that's playing Power 5 competition, but also whether that's just knowing how to show up in big moments, knowing how to pitch against big opponents, which is where Keeney was. I think that's the most important thing that needs to come out of the portal. Outside of that, I think the combination of the freshman class and the talent that you're going to be able to get just by being Oklahoma, I think that's going to come. But I think the biggest thing that they need to start with is prioritizing and finding somebody in that leader mold, whether that's a pitcher, whether that's a position player, somebody who fits into a hole, can be part of what Oklahoma wants to do in 25, but that brings that leadership. That's something that I think coming out of the portal is going to be super key, because you can't have that from a freshman. Freshman can lead, but you're going to have to get adjusted as a freshman. Coming out of the portal, you can have somebody who's used to leading at the college level already.
Yeah, and Justin, one of the seniors, Kenzie Hansen. I mean, it's going to be a lot different seeing a different catcher back there on an everyday basis. And you mentioned the freshmen. They got Riley Zaki, and then Corey Hicks has played some catcher as well coming in freshman. Do you think that's a position portal-wise they hit, or do you think it's something like? I mean, you look at Atwood at Texas. I mean, there's been young catchers go in there and play really well. So is that a position you think that maybe they go with one of the freshmen, or if they also portal there? I mean, they portaled last year with Ludlam, and Ludlam was not an everyday player, but they did portal there a little bit. So kind of what are your thoughts on that?
I think somebody in that Ludlam mold out of the portal would be a worthy acquisition. It's a light class of catchers this year, to be honest, in the portal. That doesn't mean others can't go in. Obviously, there's still a few days left in the portal window. But somebody in that Ludlam type, I think, would be really good for Oklahoma. You talked about Reese Atwood. I think it's a great example. Atwood was good as a freshman. She was great as a sophomore. But she was good as a freshman. I think you can get good out of a freshman. You can get great out of a freshman, make no mistake, don't get me wrong. But I think good is a fair expectation for a freshman. And you well might get that. But I think that the opportunity, if it presented itself, to find a veteran catcher, just somebody who's played college ball, just somebody who, maybe whether it's the team is struggling, maybe you've had a bad weekend. Maybe you had a bad Friday and it's Saturday. Maybe a conference series didn't go your way. Somebody who can step in, handle the pitching staff, calm the pitching staff if it's needed, be a veteran force behind the plate. Maybe there's a pitcher who has the yips. Maybe there's wild pitches are a thing because it's muggy out. Somebody who can step in and know, okay, I've got to be a wall. I do think that would be a very worthy acquisition. At the same time, like I say, it's a little bit of a light portal class for catchers, so I'm not sure if it's acquirable. If it is, though, I do think that would be something I could see OU pursuing, and I think it would be something that would be helpful.
Yeah, and the good news is they have Kenzie Hansen and Carly Keeney, two that you mentioned, along with Tiare as GAs that are staying on, so they'll be there to help. But, Justin, talking about the portal, obviously in other sports, specifically, basketball, NBA, there's that kind of mantra of, let's create this super team and go try to beat the big dogs. Let's go slay the giant, if you will. Is that going to make itself? I'm like, we haven't really seen that. OU is able to land Kelly Maxwell, one of the top pitchers out of the portal. It's that motto of join them. But do you think we're going to see where maybe some players are going to try to team up, because that's really the other option at that point? Join them, or get something together and try to beat them. I'm just curious, if it's going to go to that direction. You think?
I think it could. I don't think we're there yet. And I think the thing about this Oklahoma senior class that just graduated, the fact that they all came up together, I think everybody kind of realized if you were going to beat them, you were going to have to beat them on the merits. You weren't going to outslug them. You weren't going to outplay them. You could outplay them, but like you weren't going to out effort them. Like you were going to beat them on the merits. If you beat whatever pitcher, it was because she was going to miss a pitch or you were going to square up a good pitch. If you beat them, you held them down, it's because you were going to have a great pitcher who limited their offense. So I don't think we're at that point yet. I could see a recipe where we get to that point, certainly. I think where we're more likely going to be /are is kind of where Oklahoma was this year with Maxwell, where you have a lot of homegrown talent. Somebody just has a really good eye and then supplements that with a Maxwell, with a insert player here, kind of 2 years ago when they brought in Sid Sanders and all of a sudden she's locked down first base. I think that's more where we're looking is more likely in the near future out of the portal is teams pulling in players from recruits from travel ball and then supplementing out of the portal and kind of coming up with a mixed super team, if you will. I could absolutely see us being there in a year, maybe two.
Yeah. Hey, Justin, Hodge entered the portal for Oklahoma. Didn't really early on, splitting playing time with Alina Torres. And then when Leon Torres goes down, she ends up having a great World Series. I think a lot of people thought, oh, this is going to catapult her into next year with Oklahoma with a lot of open positions. I mean, there's a ton of open positions at Oklahoma. Were you surprised by that? Do you think that's more of a thing of just wanting to change the scenery for her career? Just kind of thoughts on Hodge.
I was not surprised, to be honest. I actually thought there was a possibility Hodge might transfer last summer. And then coming into the 24 season, I also thought there was when she didn't, I should say, I also thought there was a possibility you could see Hodge at second. I think she's a good little player. And when I say little, I don't mean that in any way other than stature, I guess you might say. But I thought there might be a chance for her to. I thought she was a better second baseman. Torres was just fine during her career. It's nothing against her. I just thought with the years she had remaining in her potential, I thought I could see Hodge at second. When she didn't start at second, I kind of anticipated this during the summer. Like, I mean, it was just one of those things where her opportunities were just kind of limited. So it made sense to me that she might decide to go somewhere and maybe play every day. And I think, too, even with coming into next year, I think she would have had a shot at multiple positions. But I've seen enough players who go through this transfer process where, one I don't know Avery Hodge. I've never talked to her. I'd only off the top of my head where she played travel ball. But when I look at it, I kind of compare to some players who've gone to the portal in the past where maybe you thought they were going to be a starter 1 year. They weren't. And so maybe, okay, I don't want to take a chance on not it happening again, on not starting again. I don't know that that's Hodge's case, but I certainly could see a recipe for that. I could see that being part of it. So I wasn't surprised she went in. I think she's a solid player. I think what we saw in the World Series is what she's capable of, playing every day. And I've also seen a lot of players who step in big moments. And that to me is as impressive as if you hit 400 through the course of an entire season. To step in as a starter during the World Series and perform like she did both offensively and defensively is impressive to me as if you played, like you hit 400 or you had 0 errors through a 56-game season. So that's kind of where I see that one. I wasn't super surprised by it. I think she'll land somewhere really good. And I think she's a good young player.
Yeah. Justin, you've seen kind of a lot of different programs and been around the game of softball. What is there something that you could pinpoint and say, yeah, something about the culture at Oklahoma that is unique or different, or is it just, Gasso's getting really good players and there's a combo of those things?
I honestly attribute a lot of it to a certain group of players who were there for the start of this, I'll call it a dynasty. Not just this senior class, because I want to throw Grace Lyons and Grace Green in there. You take this senior class that was here. So take your Colemans, your Jennings, your Hanson, Grace Lyons, Grace Green. And that's the core of the group that I actually give a lot of credit for where Oklahoma has been and how they've been able to be so consistent. Because you've seen a lot of good teams who have great years, programs that have great years, programs that have great 2 or 3 years. But to sustain what they did, I actually, and it's not taking anything away from anybody else, but I give a lot of credit to that group of players, to Lyons and Green, to Coleman, Jennings, Hanson, that group. Because if you look at Grace Green, she started her career so hot and then turned into a pinch hitter, you know, a bench player, but she stayed put. But she was such a core part of the culture at OU. Grace Lyons. I mean, we all know Grace Lyons. And you look at the position of leadership, but also how she led. And then you look at that class that just graduated, led by Coleman, Jennings, and Hanson. And I just look at them. They're all very different players in their styles. Coleman is fiery. Jennings is quiet. Hanson is either or, depending on the situation. So I give a lot of credit to that group, honestly, because I think that group has been so crucial. Because you think about it, the transfers that have come in, that's the group that they walked into. I'm imagining that members of that group probably met with transfers on visits. You know, they told them, this is what you're getting here. That's the group that's been there with this fan base. The fan base has grown. The pressure and the attention has also grown, and they've handled it. And because they've handled it, I think everybody else in that locker room and around the program has been able to handle it. So I'm not taking anything away from Patty or the coaching staff or anything like that, but I really give a lot of credit to that core group of players and seeing how they did things, how they led, what they did. To me, that's a huge, crucial part of how OU has been the last few years and how they've been able to be so consistent the last few years.
Yeah, this past year, OU had 2 freshmen that were just phenomenal, and Cassidy Pickering and Ella Parker. I mean, right now it's June 11th. It's you're fresh off of this past season, but is there a particular freshman in this incoming class for Oklahoma that you think is going to have a significant year one?
So there are several. I could probably name any. I think it's an 8-member class, and I could probably name any one of them and give you a reason why. But one I'm really interested in is Riley Zach, and I'm probably not saying her last name right. I'm a writer. We don't usually say things right. We write things as long as we spell them right. But no, the thing about her, you know, she was originally committed to Missouri, decommitted. Her sister and her both committed to Oklahoma. So she wasn't somebody who has been, you know, committed to Oklahoma, you know, for 2 or 3 years, you know, wasn't one of the early recruits. Like she's still a pretty new commit. And here she's coming in within a year of actually committing to OU. She's catcher. So it's a position of need, like we've talked about. And I think what's interesting to me about her is the fact that she wasn't OU from day one. The fact that she saw something at Oklahoma, whether it was being able to play with her sister, that's totally possible that's all it was. But she saw something in Oklahoma to go and be there a year before her sister was, to go in her class, you know, things like that. So to me, she's really interesting. She's an excellent player. I mean, she's an excellent player. She was recruited by a bunch of SEC schools. Like all the big dogs, so to speak, know what she's made of as a player. It's a position of need for OU. So there, to me, is the opportunity, at least in fall camp, to win that position. Even if somebody comes out of the portal, I think there's that opportunity to win that position. I'm really curious what we're going to see from her. And I think she's got the possibility and the opportunity to be really, really something good.
Yeah. Hey, Justin, you mentioned SEC schools. This SEC is loaded as it is. Now you're adding OU Texas. I mean, just unbelievable conference. I mean, it seems like you got the SEC and then a bunch of other conferences overall, but just kind of tell us the impact you think OU Texas make right away in the SEC.
Oh, I don't even think I can put it into words, to be honest. You're taking the strongest overall conference and you're adding the teams that just, well, I started to say finished 1 and 2. They spent the entire year at 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Like you 2 teams who, even when they dipped from 1 to 2, and I know Texas was a little under 2, but you know, most of the year Oklahoma and Texas were 1 and 2 once they got there. I don't even know that I can describe what it does to the SEC. It makes the strongest conference that much stronger. You know, it's going to be a thing in the next year. I mean, as soon as the 25 season, but certainly the next couple of years. Okay, well, the SEC put a team in almost every regional. They put all but 1, all but 2, because they're going to have that many teams. And, case by case, is that going to be right or wrong? We'll figure it out when we get to the postseason, whenever that might happen. But the thing is, there's going to be an argument. I can sit here and look at a piece of paper and say, okay, you know what? I can see the SEC being strong enough to deserve 14 or 15 teams in the tournament. It might happen deserved or not, but I see a recipe where that's possible because that's how strong the SEC now is. And you literally just added the two teams who were tops in the country, not tops in their conference. They were that too, but tops in the country. I don't know that I can accurately describe what I think it's going to do for the SEC. The SEC tournament is going to be, a trial run for the World Series. Like, I don't think that's hyperbole. I really think that could be what we're looking at.
Hey, what's the best stadium to watch a game in the SEC?
Well, does that count Love's Field yet? Or since it's not
can't count Love's Field yet. No.
In the SEC, I'm gonna go Tiger Park, LSU. When they get a full crowd, that's a pretty rowdy place. I really like Davis Diamond, just for what it's worth. Now that A&M is so good, I could see Davis Diamond taking that title. But from an overall atmosphere and the stadium, I'm going to say Tiger Park right now.
Hey, and speaking of stadiums, I got to ask this since we have you on here. There was a lot of talk because of what Mike White said about, the Women's College World Series and the venue and the advantage that it gives. I think the contract is till 2035. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what will it take for that to change, to go somewhere else?
I don't think it's going to change, to be honest. And truth be told, I don't think it should. And I'm going to say this. I don't think Mike White thinks it should change. I think anybody who's been around as long as people like Mike and I have, Mike's been around a heck of a lot longer than I have, but you look at that stadium, even with the outfield for the World Series being temporary bleachers, like not being there for 11 months out of the year, but you look around with what that stadium is, even if you take out those bleachers, like look at the second deck, look at the press box, look at the TV, look at the concession stands, all those kinds of things. There's no facility that matches that. And I don't even think, and if you read the quote Mike White gave, I don't think it was this time I think the headline was a little unfair. Like, I know what he said, but I think the headline was a little unfair. I don't think he was trying to take a shot this time. I think it's somebody who realizes he's got a team that's good enough to win a national championship talent-wise, and realizing that that's harder to do with 15, 12,000 of your opposing team's fans there. Like, I think that's really all it was. I don't think the World Series will leave Oklahoma City. I don't think it should. That facility, even when you just consider, even if you take it at its absolute worst and say, oh, those are temp bleachers in the outfield, those aren't there the rest of the year. Like, even if you think about it in its worst light, that is still the best facility for the World Series, for what we do. And even though, things like, hey, the parking situation's not great. Hey, you got to walk. Hey, you got to wait an hour for a shuttle. Hey, you got to have a park. Even if you look at the worst pieces of it, if that's the worst that it is, and you still fit 12, almost 13,000 people in a stadium to watch a softball game, to enjoy a softball game, to cheer for a softball team, like that, to me, it's never going to leave. It shouldn't. And I genuinely don't think anybody thinks it should. Does everybody love playing Oklahoma in front of 12,500 Oklahoma fans? Probably not. But I genuinely don't think there's anybody in softball who actually thinks it should leave.
Yeah, that's well put, Justin. And hey, don't want to take too much of your time. I know you're crazy busy with portal, everything going on. I'm sure it's this time of year is nuts for you. But hey, one last question: creamy coconut Dr. Pepper. Are you going to go for it? Are you a regular Dr. Pepper guy?
Shame in admitting that either.
What's that? Sorry, you cut out for a second.
Oh no, I will try pretty much any Dr. Pepper once. I have no shame in admitting that. I am a regular Dr. Pepper guy. I don't drink diet. I drink a little zero sugar, healthy. But I will pretty much try any Dr. Pepper at least once.
Awesome. Hey, man, appreciate you so much joining us. Really appreciate it. Go give him a follow, Justin McLeod. Great work, man, you do. Really appreciate all your work you do for softball.
I appreciate you. This was fun, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right. Talk to you later.
Justin.